Hello, I'm Edwin Lane and welcome to a special edition of Business Daily from Vancouver, here on the west coast of Canada. Coming up, we'll be asking why this city of 2.5 million people has become one of the least affordable places to live in the world.
It's irrational. If you look at the prices in the graphs, it's completely off the charts. Whether it's going to bubble, whether it's going to explode, we don't know.
How is that affecting young Vancouver residents? And is a massive influx of cash from China to blame for the crisis?
What I believe we don't need is a lot of millionaires to move here to support the local Ferrari dealership, which we now have.
That's all coming up on Business Daily here on the BBC World Service. It's no secret these days that many of the world's major cities are becoming increasingly expensive places to live. Just ask residents about house prices in Hong Kong, London, New York, even Sydney. But one name you might not expect to see on that list is the one I'm in now, Vancouver, in British Columbia on Canada's Pacific coast. I'm standing by the harbour side, the sun is glistening on the water. In the distance you might even be able to hear the sound of seaplanes taking off and landing. But down the road it's the sound of construction. Huge apartment blocks rapidly being built to respond to property prices that in recent years have gone through the roof, turning this city into the least affordable in the whole of North America. So what's going on? We've come here to find out.
Okay. Right now, we're on Point Grey Road. It's considered the billionaire's road. Probably one of the best investments in Western Canada. You can see Stanley Park, you can see the North Shore mountains, you can see all of downtown. You can't get any views like this anywhere in Western Canada.
Brian Yan is a real estate agent riding the wave of Vancouver's booming property market. He shows me round a 2-bed seafront house aimed at the super-rich foreign buyers that many say are pumping billions into the market here.
In the front, we have the Infinity Edge jacuzzi, wide plank floors, we've got polished concrete, and we have a rooftop garden too.
How much is this going to set me back, Brian?
10.98 million Canadian.
In US dollars, about, 8 or 9 million? Who's interested in buying it?
A lot of international people. They might own in London, in New York, in Hong Kong, or in Peking, and it's for like the billionaires, for the centimillionaires. A lot of developers, local developers that are just, I guess they are taking advantage of the market. Whether it's going to bubble, whether it's going to explode, we don't know. In the recent 2 years, I think there's been a lot of money coming from overseas. And when the locals see that, they get into it. So when somebody feels something is scarce, they will do something irrationally. So which is what's happening in the market today.
You feel the market's acting irrationally at the moment in Vancouver?
Completely, yes. It's irrational. If you look at the prices in the graphs, it's completely off the charts.
Vancouver real estate is red hot. And it's not just at Brian's millionaire end of the market. The cost of an average home in the city is rising at a rate of between 20 and 30% a year. And a typical detached house will now set you back about 1.3 million Canadian dollars. That's about $1 million US dollars in a city where incomes are among the lowest in the whole country. As the Royal Bank of Canada put it recently, Vancouver is becoming dangerously unaffordable.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, very well, thanks. Edwin from the BBC.
Hey, David.
Price increases have been dramatic, in some homes as much as 40% a year.
David Eby is the member of British Columbia's Legislative Assembly for Point Grey, Vancouver, and the housing spokesman for the main opposition party, the New Democrat Party. What impact is that having on people in the area of Vancouver that you represent and the wider city?
Well, there are a couple direct effects that we can track. One is we have a record low number of very young people, 18 to 25, moving to Vancouver. We have a record high number of 25 to 35-year-olds leaving Vancouver. These are people starting families, starting their careers. It's having impacts on our economy and the ability of businesses to grow. And it's also having an impact on people's well-being. Vancouver was found to be one of the least happy cities in Canada. We have the lowest discretionary income for 25 to 35-year-old couples in all of Canada. We have the lowest income for people with a university degree, and we have the highest housing costs. So when you put all that together, it's a really difficult place to make a go of it if you're not already established.
What's behind this crisis?
Well, there are a number of different factors. So one factor, for example, is it's quite a beautiful place. It's a wonderful place to be. There's mountains, there's water, it's quite temperate. It's geographically constrained. There's a fixed area. We can't sprawl out forever. But even when these factors are controlled, the researchers who are looking at this problem, they say there's a significant departure in our prices from other areas that have similar challenges, like Seattle, which is just across the border in the United States, same geography, same attraction. And the difference between the two cities is attributed to very significant inflows of international money into our housing market. We saw in the international media, Lawrence Fink, who's the head of BlackRock, the world's largest investment firm, tell international investors from around the world, they have $4.3 trillion under management, don't invest in gold anymore. Invest in condos in Manhattan, in London, and in Vancouver, British Columbia. And to people who lived here, that seems so crazy. Why would Vancouver, BC be on that list of international investors as a place to put their money?
So where is all this money coming from? Well, much of the anecdotal evidence at least points to one source in particular, the other side of the Pacific Ocean, from mainland China. One of the things you really notice walking around downtown Vancouver is, first of all, how big the real estate industry is here. There's an advert for a real estate agent on almost every city bus that goes by. And the second thing you notice is that most of them are marketing directly to Chinese investors and Chinese buyers. A lot of them, in fact, are written in Chinese. And that gives you a sense of the influence of Chinese buyers on the property markets here. David Lay is a geography professor at the University of British Columbia, who's researched the influence of Chinese money on places like Vancouver.
You need to go back to the 1980s. British Columbia was going through a very difficult period. Politicians saw the growth area of Asia Pacific and saw a lot of economic growth and potential for investment and indeed migration, and they went after it hard.
Until just 2 years ago, the Canadian government offered foreign nationals residency in exchange for an $800,000 loan, a program enthusiastically taken up by wealthy Chinese.
Associated now with these networks, these tight networks that exist between Vancouver and Asia Pacific, is investment in property, both by the business migrants themselves and by offshore investors. And now we have reached an extraordinary level of investment here.
Give me a sense, if you could, of how much money has come into the property markets from mainland China in recent years.
We don't know because the provincial government has chosen not to collect data. But we do know that Chinese buyers are buying at the top end of the market, which is common. This happens in other cities too. I've seen 3 studies looking at different parts of the west side of Vancouver, where the wealthier neighborhoods. Each of those studies estimated that at the top end, about 70% of the market was mainland Chinese.
Even if wealthy foreign buyers limit themselves to Vancouver's swankiest neighbourhoods, there's a ripple effect on prices being felt across the city as homeowners move out in search of more affordable suburbs, forcing many, particularly the young, to start looking outside the city itself.
My name is Evelyn Shaw, and I started a hashtag in May 2015 called Don't Have a Million, and it's addressing housing affordability in Vancouver. It was actually a very specific moment where I was reading the news, and there was an article about a young doctor who wanted to stay in the city, and he had a family, but unfortunately it was just too expensive for him and his family to stay, and his wife is a teacher. So he wrote an op-ed addressing the mayor of the city and talking about how there's something very, very wrong in the city of Vancouver if a person or a family like theirs cannot afford to stay.
How common are stories like that in Vancouver now?
People leaving is very, very common. Actually, every other day I see a blog post or another tweet that says, finally, I'm giving up after spending my whole life in the city. Often people move to the Vancouver Island, which is quite far from here, or to Kelowna. Personally, more than half my friends from university have left, and that's been, personally quite tragic for me.
And they've left because they can't simply afford to live in the city itself. They can't afford to buy or even rent?
They can't afford to live the life that they imagined they were going to live, settle down with a family in the city. Tons of people who, up until their 40s are sharing accommodations in student-like dormitories or student-like housing, and it's kind of extending our, not to say our childhood, but it feels like we're not able to grow up and settle down.
Well, it's a very pleasant Saturday afternoon here in Vancouver. The sun is out and people are milling around, having a bit of brunch, drinking some coffee and enjoying the warm weather. But increasingly, the affordability crisis is rising to the top of people's concerns. And that's not just among young people hoping to get onto the housing ladder. It's homeowners too who are worried about the future of their children's generation in this city. Campaigners say something needs to be done to curb foreign investment and make it at least possible for locals to buy a house. But the debate is being hampered by a lack of data. No one knows how much money is coming in from abroad, where that money is coming from, and identifying Chinese investors as part of the problem has prompted concerns of racism in a city with a long history of Chinese immigration. Cameron Muir is the chief economist at the British Columbia Real Estate Association, the trade body that represents real estate agents. He says the influence of foreign money in Vancouver is being vastly overstated.
One of the problems with, I think, the narrative around this subject is that there's a lot of pretty sketchy numbers out there in which are being forwarded as solid evidence of a phenomenon. What we look at is the best available data. Based on that evidence, we don't see it as a significant issue as is being told in the media. Now, that doesn't mean we're saying zero. We're saying, yes, absolutely, foreign investment is a factor in Vancouver. Yes, absolutely, we've had a larger share than other areas of Canada of investor-class immigrants who have come to Vancouver with a lot of wealth. And they've, for the most part, bought homes here. But to say that somehow foreign investment is making it unaffordable for first-time buyers to get into the housing market in Vancouver is a bit of a stretch.
We always laugh because it's a lot like the tobacco executives saying there's no proof that smoking causes cancer.
David Eby again.
It's so obvious what's happening in our market here. And yeah, it's really hard to show that definitive link. But when you look at other cities, we are a freak show. We're an international freak show. Everybody except, it seems, the realtors and people connected with the development industry say that there's a serious issue here. And the reasons why the real estate brokers, for example, don't see a problem, I think, is quite obvious. Traditionally, immigration meant that you were coming to British Columbia to work and live in this area. And now what we're seeing, in my opinion, is an immigration of money. We really desperately need people to come and live here who have skills of certain types. We need to fulfill our international refugee obligations. What I believe we don't need is a lot of millionaires to move here to support the local Ferrari dealership, which we now have.
But anyways, welcome to Vancouver.
Thank you very much.
Hope you guys enjoy your stay.
Faced with a lack of information on what exactly is going on in Vancouver's property market, some people have taken matters into their own hands.
My name is Andy Yan. I'm the acting director of the city program at Simon Fraser University, as well as an urban planner with Bing Tom Architects.
Andy Yan's research has tried to uncover the influence of foreign investment using unusual data sources. For example, he tried to work out how many apartments downtown were being left empty.
We're right now at Cole Harbour, which is one of the newer areas and developments within the downtown peninsula of the city of Vancouver.
And we've come here after dark. It's a beautiful May evening here. There's people having dinner behind us. We can see the sort of silhouettes of the mountain range behind us, the beautiful water. We're looking at these huge condo towers. What can we learn from looking at them tonight?
I think what we learned from looking at them tonight is that no one seems to be home. We looked at various data sources. We looked at the amount people these units were using in terms of electricity, as well as I think what we were able to get the most robust was actually census responses. And really in our census responses for this particular neighborhood, we found that about 25%, 24.5% of the buildings here, of the units, were empty.
This is a sign that Vancouver's property market is broken, isn't it?
Well, I think it's how you define broken, because the issue is who is it supposed to serve? It isn't the what we build, but then who are we building for? Increasingly, the city of Vancouver is a city you can't grow into, but you grow out of. the notion that this is a city where you can have a life cycle of being single in your young 20s and then earning a professional life, and then going in and then raising a family is increasingly being heavily challenged.
Do the rules of the game need to change, do you think, in the 21st century?
Well, I think the rules of the game need to recognize how the 21st century works. And I think part of the kind of characteristics of the 21st century is the role of how certain classes of people are using housing as a parking space for money.
So what's the solution? What can cities do to make sure their residents have an affordable place to live in the face of ever-increasing flows of money from foreign investors looking for a safe place to park their cash? Thomas Davidoff is a housing economist at the Sauder School of Business at the University of British Columbia. He says it all starts with tax.
Vancouver has bargain basement property tax rates, but very high income and sales tax rates. So we encourage people to invest in real estate and discourage people from working or selling things for a living. So we would have a much more vibrant and dynamic economy with a lot more jobs and people being more productive and having more incentive to work if we shifted the taxes from working for a living to merely owning real estate. So the government has easy tools to work with to really enhance affordability for the next couple of generations. If there isn't progress in the next couple of years, I am not at all optimistic that Vancouver is going to be a place where people can really work for a living and live there. I think it's going to be a playground for the rich. I asked a graduate student whose father is a sort of intermediary between Chinese money and the Vancouver housing market, why don't you go to San Francisco? And he said it. He said, look, the property taxes are very low in Vancouver. So that is a very powerful magnet, as I say, for China today. But my expectation is Russian and Middle Eastern money won't be far behind.
But for long-term residents like Evelyn Shah, any action from the government here may come too late. How do you see your own future in Vancouver?
I am probably going to leave. I'm planning an exit strategy, so yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Sad. But I think I've done what I could. I've done my civic duty. It's really up to the people who are in power to do something about it. So
that's it from Business Daily with me, Edwin Lane, in Vancouver. You can catch up with more of our programmes by downloading the Business Daily podcast or visiting the BBC World Service website.